we doing, guys? Gals? We're into the top 20 now. The Great Jazz Countdown. This is my lovely Vanna wife, and she's here to help us flip tiles on the game of the great saxophone battle of the saxes. We're into number 20 now, and I gotta say, there's some interesting insight I'm going to share with you guys when this is all said and done. That it's just been really informative for me, and I've learned a lot. Number 20 on the list is the great Benny Golson. My wife's going to start showing you these albums. Pull it forward a little bit so it's a little bigger. There you go. That's on the Contemporary label, about 1957. He is a Philadelphia guy through and through. He plays with guys like Train, Red Garland, Jimmy Heath, and Philly Joe in Philadelphia as a young guy. He ends up playing with Lionel Hampton. Over half this list, I swear, played with Lionel Hampton as a young guy. He ends up moving on to Dizzy's group for a while. 53 to 59, he's playing with Tad Dameron for quite a long time. He's mainly a writer with Dizzy and with Lionel Hampton. That's the interesting thing. He's more of a writer-composer than he is a player, even though he is playing. He plays with Blakey in 1958 and the Jazz Messengers on the great Moanin' record, one of the great Jazz Messenger records that's out there. You can start going through those. He goes to the Riverside label in 58 and 57, and he makes a couple great records there. This one here is The Modern Touch with Kenny Dorham, J.J. Johnson, Wynton Kelly, and Paul Chambers. This is a Jazzland reissuing of that same record. And then this is the second record on Riverside here. That's The Other Side of Benny Golson, number 290. So that's about 58 on that one. That's great stuff. He does this record for United Artists in 1958 called The Philadelphians with Lee Morgan, Philly Joe Jones, Percy Heath, and Ray Bryant. Of course, all Philly cats. Philly is probably the second greatest, maybe third. Detroit, Chicago, Philly. He signs with Prestige in 59. Makes a series of really hard records to find on the New Jazz imprint. There's Gone with Groovin' with Golson, Gone with Golson. These are tough records to come by. You just don't find them. The Japanese did reissue them, thankfully. This is the third one. That's a solid record as well, with Curtis Fuller, Tommy Flanagan, Doug Watkins, and Art Taylor. Those are really great records, and like I said, they're tough to really come by. He moves to Argo in 1960, and this record, taking number from 1 to 10, is interesting. He does solo, then he does a trio, a duo, trio, quartet, quintet, all the way up to a dectet, which is known as 9. Dectet's 10. You don't see that configuration too often. Then he joins the Jazz Tet. And well, him and Art Farmer create the Jazz Tet. And these are some of the great records on the Argo label. They make a series of about 5 of them. I'm going to let you get a closer look at that. Curtis Fuller's with this group. McCoy Tyner is on the first couple. Lex Humphreys, Addison Farmer. Serious, modern, hard-driving, one of the great quintets in jazz at this time. I'd say it's on par with a lot of the Miles Coltrane stuff. You know, it's Golson's brilliant, melodic, has a great force to him. Farmer is just like Miles in the terms of his soft lyricalism, his melodic center, his beauty on a ballad. Art Farmer is an equal to Miles Davis in almost every aspect. Because it's on the Argo label, it doesn't get near the attention of the stuff that they did on Columbia, of what Miles does in Columbia, but these are great records. If you stumble on any of these Jazz Tet records, this is high quality stuff. That's with John Lewis, who was in the Modern Jazz Quartet, of course. He's on the piano on that one. This one, what a great album cover that is. Argo number 688 at the Birdhouse. I love all this Jazz Tet stuff. This one's a little later. It's actually on the Mercury label now, which is also out of Chicago. 62, another get-together. Art Farmer, Benny Golson. One of the great groups of this time. And he makes the second solo record here on Argo in 62. This one's called Free. Great stuff. In 64, he does this record back on Prestige. And this is with Stockholm Sojourn International Jazz Orchestra under the direction of Benny Golson. And this has quite a huge ensemble on it. Cecil Payne, Benny Paley, Grasham Moncourt, a number of Europeans like Bengt Arn Valen, I Thielen, Rune Falk, names that are fun to say that I can't really say. This is a record he does now on Verve, probably 1966, 67. Tune in and turn on, talking about kind of the psychedelic era, kind of a weird cover. Creed Taylor's, of course, long gone. No, maybe he's still there, actually. No, it's produced by Tom Wilson, Benny Golson. Kind of a cool record, one you don't see very often. Golson's side work is pretty prolific as well. He's one of the giants of this era. Now we're going to move on to Joe Henderson, who is also a brilliant player. He's going to be one of the last players that we feature in this series in terms of when they show up on the scene. He shows up pretty late here compared to a lot of these other guys that are around from the 30s and sometimes even the 20s. Henderson's a late arrival. Henderson's a brilliant player. He's steeped in the blues. He's got hints of Latin in him at times. He does some real Latin flavored stuff. He's got edges of the avant-garde. His first few records are much more hard bop driven, and then he kind of starts experimenting more with the sound and tonality. His 5 Blue Note records are all kind of classics in every sense of the word. Henderson's born April 24, 1937 in a place called Lima, Ohio. I can't even tell you where that is. He ends up in Detroit, though. He's influenced by guys like Lester Young, Stan Getz, Dexter Gordon, Charlie Parker. He plays with Flip Phillips, actually, a guy who should be on this list, but I haven't got any records by him. At 18-year-old, he's in the Detroit scene playing with the Detroit guys. He goes to Wayne University, gets a degree in music, Army from 60 to 62. While he's in the Army, he meets Kenny Clark and Kenny Drew in Paris. He comes back to the United States, and he goes to New York City, starts hanging out with Kenny Dorham, and he picks up that R&B, bebop, Latin influence, even edges of the avant-garde. He plays on some classic Hancock stuff, Lee Morgan stuff, a couple of Andrew Hill's great records. He's on the great Boss Rock record by Pete LaRocca, where he's the prominent artist on that. He's also a member of the Horace Silver Group from 62 to 65 or so, and an important member of that band. This is page 1, 4140, probably comes out in 62, followed by Our Thing, which has got Kenny Dorham, Andrew Hill, Eddie Kahn, and Pete LaRocca. That's a great record. And then In and Out, where he starts exploring a little bit more edges of the avant-garde and a little bit more spice, as it were. I think this is with Richard Davis on the bass. Yeah, Elvin Jones, McCoy Tyner. It's always fun to hear McCoy and Elvin after they leave Coltrane. They seem to be enjoying playing more in the pocket again. This is a record called Inner Urge, one of his real classic records. I love this album from 1964. That's the same record. This has McCoy Tyner, Bob Cranshaw, Elvin Jones, and Joe Henderson, so it's a quartet. And like I said, it just really feels like by 64, 65, McCoy and Elvin are thirsty to play outside of the frenetic Coltrane group, where it was hard to keep up with John. You know, and Pharoah Saunders is starting to join the crew. Coltrane's starting to get out there. Alvin especially, I feel like by 65, those side work he picks and some of the groups he works with, you can tell he wants to be more based back in the blues. Like Coltrane got out beyond him. Mode for Joe, 4227, is one of his last Blue Notes. Another great record. This is Bobby Hutcherson, the great vibist, Lee Morgan, Curtis Fuller, Cedar Walton, Ron Carter, and the drummer Joe Chambers. All of these Blue Notes by him are absolutely must-haves. He records on the Milestone label throughout the 70s and the 80s. I don't have any of it because I haven't collected that era, but his stuff from that period, I've heard it streaming, it's outstanding. He's one of the great luminaries of jazz throughout some of the darker times in jazz. He's still making great traditional jazz centered on blues and tone and not trying to follow gimmicks and fads. He's always been a great player. He comes back and mid-80s, I think. And he does these 2 records, State of the Tenor, Volume 1 and 2. And it's on the Resurgent Blue Note label by Michael Kuskuna. And these are both really beautiful records. There's some aspects of all his playing on these. And then this one's from the 90s on a Verve reissue when they started making records on that label again. Joe Henderson, Double Rainbow. And there's some real bossa nova influence stuff here. And he's doing the music of Antonio Carlos Jobim, so that would make sense. I love these late Joe Henderson records, and he's one of the few guys I really dove into from later eras. I love Kenny Burrell's later stuff. I love Joe Henderson's later stuff. I will always buy it when I see it nowadays. Of course, I don't get to go to record stores a whole lot as of right now. Number 18 on the list is the great Gene Ammons. And Gene Ammons is a prolific musician. He's a wonderfully tonally centered player, very much in the sounds of Lester, Coleman, and Webster. He's in that framework. He's kind of a bridge, along with Dexter and Sonny Stitt, actually, from the bebop into R&B and soul jazz. And he always maintains elements of some of Parker's playing, but he doesn't just follow Parker blindly. He does, and he ends up being one of the real proponents of the soul jazz movement in the 60s into the 70s. He starts out April 14, 1925, a Chicago guy. He goes to the DuSable High School in Chicago with under the great Walter Dyett, who I've talked about endlessly as one of the great black teachers that's teaching these kids music and really propelling a lot of great jazz careers. He's the son of the boogie woogie piano player, the great Albert Ammons. So jazz is very much a family thing. In '44, he's working with Billy Eckstein, another guy who's really one of the great schools, nurseries of jazz, along with Benny Goodman, and of course, for the black guys, it's been Lionel Hampton and Billy Eckstein that were the real nurseries of this music, along with Blakey later. It's Billy Eckstein that first calls him Jug, and the black folks love to nickname each other, and Jug really stuck throughout his career. He works with Bird and Dexter, and he's like part of that scene, part of the bebop movement, but he definitely moves away from it and doesn't just copycat by any means what's happening. He leads a group of his own in 1949 with Sonny Stitt and the young Miles Davis. Doesn't stay together too long. He ends up replacing Stan Getz in the Woody Herman second herd early in the 50s. In the 50s, him and Sonny Stitt are kind of a duo. They're working together on a number of things. They're great battlers. People love to go see them battle live. He ends up spending two terms in prison. First from 58 to 60, and then he's released, and he's back in jail in 62 to 69, 7 years. And when he gets out in 69, Bob Weinstock at Prestige offers him the biggest contract he ever offered anybody. That's how much he valued having Gene Ammons back on the scene. He plays with a lot of greats. Donald Byrd, Jackie McLean, John Coltrane, Kenny Burrell, Mal Waldron, Al Farmer. Let's start digging through his discography. This is his Prestige stuff from the late 50s, before his first prison term. This is 70-50. This is also 70-50. These have alternate covers. 70-60. Not really the blues. And this is the same record, actually. The Gene Ammons All-Stars. And listen to that tone. He's just so soulful. Donald Byrd, Jackie McLean, Farmer, Watkins, Taylor, Waldron. Just serious players are on these early records. Gene Fammon's Funky, Hi-Fi Jam Session, 70-83, probably 1958. Kenny Burrell, Jackie McLean, Art Farmer, Mal Waldron, Doug Watkins, and Art Taylor. So he's really in the thick of things in the late 50s. This is Jamming and Hi-Fi with Gene Ammons, 71-10. Idris Suleiman, Kenny Burrell, Jackie McLean, Mal Waldron. These are all outstanding records. And if you love soul jazz at all, R&B flavored, barbecue tasting, baked beans dripping down your chin, this music tastes like the blues. It's just drenched in that whole atmosphere. And you can feel Memphis, you can feel Kansas City, you can feel Chicago, and then you can feel New York. It's just this black urbanity splashing you with smoked barbecued meat. It's wonderful. Gene Ammons All-Stars, 7132, Coltrane's on this, Paul Kinnichet's on this, Jerome Richardson, the great flautist and sax player, and Pepper Adams. Like, these are fun, hard swinging records. 7146, Gene Ammons, Blue Gene. By this time, he's back in jail, and Weinstock is just digging through the vaults, finding Ammons stuff he can put out. 7180, Boss Tenor, Gene Ammons. Outstanding session. Tommy Flanagan, Doug Watkins, Ray Barretto, and Art Taylor. I love this record. I remember finding this one in a little record store in Rockford, Illinois. I was like, oh honey, I gotta buy me this record, you know. And they only wanted 60 bucks for it. I think I bundled it with some other things. I got it for about 40. It's beautiful sounding, in great condition. That tone. It's straight from Ben Webster, Coleman Hawkins, Dexter Gordon, Lucky Thompson. That's the center of the highway. You know, these guys are the center of the road. And there's guys that are bright, brittle, choppy on the one side, and there's guys that are kind of avant and moody and broody on the other side. Down the middle is this wonderful storytelling sax player that has become what I live for. This is 7192 Jug. Definitely he was in jail when that came out. Another copy of that. This is Gene Ammons and his All-Star 7201 Groove Blues. He's pretty prolific here. Ammons, Coltrane, Richardson, Pepper Adams, Paul Kinnochet. He's working with a lot of the same just all-star talent, record after record. Uptight, Gene Ammons, 7208. Soul Summit, Gene Ammons with Sonny Stitt and Jack McDuff. He does a lot of stuff with Jack McDuff, actually, on the same label. Gene Ammons twisting the jug with the great Joe Newman from the Count Basie group, one of the great trumpet players no one knows about. And then, of course, Jack McDuff. You put Newman, McDuff, and Gene Ammons in the room, them beans are going to cook themselves. You know what I mean? There's going to be all kind of honey in that barbecue sauce. It's going to be sticky. That's going to be that good blues music. The Bossa Nova became huge in 62, and 7257, Gene Ammons makes a Bossa Nova record, and it's great hearing a soul jazz guy do the Bossa Nova. It's an easy transition. Preach It, 7270, the classic Prestige logo. This record's outstanding. Again, they're all just smoking straight from the gospel steeple. We're going to use the steeple as a smoker, and we're going to barbecue all y'all in the building tonight. That's how this music works. This one doesn't even list the band, which is strange. This is a later Trident label, which they go to in the mid-60s. Gene Ammons, Etta Jones, Jack McDuff, Soul Summit Volume 2. The first one was with Stitt, if you recall. Gene Ammons' Late Hour Special, 7287. Again, while he's in jail, they're just putting stuff out. 7320, Velvet Soul. Angel Eyes, 7369. Now this is Gene Ammons live on the Cadet. Oh, this is on Prestige. This was held back from release for a long time. Cadet, Chess, and Prestige had a lawsuit over who got to put this out, and I believe Prestige finally won, even though I believe Chess recorded it. Gene Ammons' brother Jug, 7792. He's out now. He's an older, slightly wiser man, and he manages to stay out of jail from this point forward. This is the Chase, Gene Ammons and Dexter Gordon, and this is them 10 years earlier throwing down. And again, Prestige puts this out 1970, 71, but that's some great listening. And then this is on the Moodsville label, which is a Prestige vibe side label, and Gene Ammons is perfect for anything Moodsville related. Richard Wyans, Doug Watkins, J.C. Hurd on the drums. Beautiful, mellow, sweet, sticky, soulful jazz. This is Just Jug Argo 698. This is recorded at Argo, probably 1958-59. And then this one is Gene Ammons' Make It Happen. And this is also recorded earlier, doesn't come out till later. Ammons was quite a character and one of the true luminaries of the soul jazz movement. And I really enjoy listening to his stuff. It's stuff I can play while people are eating their hash browns, having their morning mimosa. Gene Ammons goes with all that. You know, he's right in that wheelhouse. Now we're going to move on to a guy that's a direct descendant of Ammons, and that's the great Stanley Turrentine. Born April 5th, 1934 in the Hill District of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a great jazz city. It's only in the shadows of Detroit, Chicago, Philly, and New York in terms of its jazz-centric musical background. So many greats are from Pittsburgh, from Art Tatum to Ahmad Jamal. It's a long list of real greats that come from there. Turrentine plays with Earl Bostic early on. He actually replaces Coltrane in Bostic's group. He's influenced largely by Illinois Jacquet. That name again. We keep seeing Jacquet's name come up. For a guy that a lot of people don't know too much about, most of the jazz players that we love all seem to have a great allegiance to Illinois Jacquet. They value him. They find him as a super big influence on their career and their trajectory, how they wanted to play. And Illinois Jacquet is the namesake of the Texas tenor movement. So Illinois is a huge cat that's really underappreciated. And I wanted to drive that home in this whole series, how elevated this guy's place should be in the jazz royalty kingdom. He signs a Blue Note in 1960. He's actually in the Army in the early 50s for a little while. He comes out, works with Max Roach in 59. He signs a Blue Note in 60. He makes a string of Blue Note records that are outstanding. And today's collector doesn't really cherish them like they should. And it's a bit like the Jimmy Smith and the Three Sounds records. They sold pretty well for a small jazz label. And that makes them more available today, which keeps their price down. And a lot of the jazz snobs think, well, it can't be any good if I can get it for 60 bucks. It's insane. It's not 60 bucks because it's less than Hank Mobley. It's 60 bucks because it's sold way better than Hank Mobley. You know, and Mobley's a fantastic player who's to come on this list. But Turrentine's an outstanding player, stuck in the blues. He's a proponent of soul jazz, but he has his own take on it. And he, like I said, he belongs in that Texas tenor school as much as soul jazz. And Texas tenor is kind of a precursor to soul jazz in a lot of ways. Because it's stuck in the blues, it's stuck with big full tones. We're not playing brittle and bright. We're playing full-bodied, gutsy, bluesy jazz. And that's the best place for jazz for my ears to be. He does a lot of work with Jimmy Smith, including the Midnight Special, Back at the Chicken Shack. Turrentine's on those records, killing it next to the great Jimmy Smith. He married Shirley Scott, the great organ player. So he's kind of surrounded by organ players quite a bit here. And him and Shirley make a long string of records together at Prestige. So he's recording at Prestige with his wife. And he's making a string of records at Blue Note that, to me, is really some of the great Blue Note royalty that people sleep on. This is his debut, number 4039. Stanley Turrentine, look out. And you need to watch out for him because he's more valuable than we tend to realize. Number 4057 is this great record with the Three Sounds. And this, to me, is a greatest place to start with Stanley Turrentine as there is. Dive in, dig, stand the man. You know, and he's playing with the great Gene Harris and that fantastic Three Sounds groove. And you put the groove of the Three Sounds with the blues and the tone of Turrentine, and on the ballads, it's just smoky dreamscapes. The Blue Hour, this is royalty right here in and of itself. Number 4065 is coming your way. His brother Tommy's on this, George Tucker, the great Horace Parland. Again, you don't see this record posted in the Facebook jazz groups like you do all the other stuff from the 4000 series. There people are posting rare Walter Davis records, and they're not posting Stan the Man. He has these 2 records that come back to back. And Minton's Playhouse. This is 4069, 4070, and these are both great records with Grant Green, Horace Parland, George Tucker, and Al Harewood. And it's such blues-driven soul from the gut. And Stan's got some sexuality to it. Stan's talking to the ladies, you know. He's definitely on that side as far as what's fueling him, what's driving him. It's the blues, the struggle, and the sexual nature of his being that's talking through his horn at all times. And they're hammering that out back there, man. This is a great record, really beloved. Stanley Turrentine 4081. So in the 4000 series, he's got 5 or 6 records already. This is a tough record to find. Again, some of these records, you think people will be out cherishing these more. That's where it's at. This is 4096 with the great Les McCann, who was on the West Coast, a great piano player from the West, singer. He's a kind of a shout guy, some gospel to him. And so this kind of starts transferring more towards the soul jazz sound. Jubilee Shout. I think this one wasn't actually issued initially. It was given number 4122, but it was shelved for a while. And then it finally comes out, I think in Japan first. I'm sure someone will correct me. But yeah, I don't think it comes out until 1978. Never Let Me Go. This record's great. It's got Shirley Scott on it, his wife, Major Hawley Jr., Al Harewood, and Sam Jones is on the bass. Just blues. Gutsy jazz, soul blues. A Chip Off the Old Block with Shirley Scott, Blue Mitchell, Earl May, and Al Harewood. Outstanding. Hustlin' with Shirley Scott, Kenny Burrell, Bob Cranshaw, Otis Finch. If you want soul jazz that's not ever going to be cheesy, you know what I mean? These aren't frozen onion rings. These are fresh, handmade, beer-battered onion rings. This is the good stuff. When you got Grant Green and Shirley Scott, Kenny Burrell, it's just such royalty on these records. There's so much guts and blues. Joyride. This is conducted with Oliver Nelson arranging, and of course Nelson's going to put some bigger frameworks on some of the pieces. Still a great record. Ernie Royal, Clark Terry, Snooky Young, J.J. Johnson, Jimmy Cleveland, Henry Coker. Man, you got J.J. Johnson, Jimmy Cleveland, and Henry Coker. You got some serious trombone action right there. Phil Woods is on this. Albert J. Johnson, Robert Ashton, Kenny Burrell, Herbie Hancock. Serious stuff. Another great soul jazz record, Rough and Tumble. This one actually has some edges to it. It's got James Spaulding, Blue Mitchell, Pepper Adams, Grant Green. He's a major part of the Blue Note story, and he's a big part of Blue Note's success. It's guys like Smith and Turrentine that are selling records that's allowing some of the more experimental Grasham Moncourt stuff to happen. This is the spoiler 4256. We're starting to get more into like 63, 64 now. Julian Priester, James Spaulding, Pepper Adams, McCoy Tyner, Mickey Roker's on the drums. Great stuff. Great cover here. Classic Reed Miles artwork right there. This is, again, we're getting pretty soul jazz on this one. Turrentine, McCoy Tyner, Cranshaw, Mickey Roker. Probably 65 at this point. Look of Love, 4286. This comes out after the Blue Note sale. And you can just tell by the look of it how different it looks. Still great stuff. Blue Note definitely feels and sounds different once they sell to United Artists. Liberty initially, then United Artists. This also comes after he's back working with his wife. Man, those two probably had their fights on their instruments. You know what I mean? Like, kind of mad at you, honey, on the organ. Kind of mad at you back from the saxophone. These two. This is kind of an unheralded record on the Impulse label. number 115 on Impulse, probably 65, 66, with Shirley Scott, Ron Carter, and a guy by the name of Max Simpkins on the drums, who I don't know. You don't see this Impulse record very often. It's solid Turrentine doing his thing. And then he goes to CTI, and his stuff at CTI is some of the best jazz that I've heard from this era. He's actually quite successful on his move here to CTI, which of course is Creed Taylor's child, his love child. All the things he didn't get to do at Impulse, and didn't get to do at Verve, didn't get to do at Bethlehem, at Creed Taylor Incorporated, he gets to do all of it. And it's very blues-centered, R&B-ish, well-produced, polished stuff. The song Sugar was actually a decent hit on the R&B charts. You got George Benson, Freddie Hubbard, and Ron Carter playing with Turrentine. You can't go wrong with that. Salt Song, in the early 6000 CTI series, 6005, 6010, Cherry is 6017, Don't Mess With Mr. T is 6030. So he's a very integral part of what Creed Taylor wants to accomplish at CTI. He knows that this is the kind of jazz I can sell. 6052, the Sugar Man, becomes one of his nicknames at that point. And then this is on the Fantasy label from 1975. Have You Ever Seen the Rain? And of course, being on Fantasy, that's Creedence Clearwater Revival territory, which makes sense for them to be doing that song. Now we're doing number 16, the great Sonny Stitt. Stitt is one of the most unappreciated guys in modern jazz. He's at the core of so much of what happens and shapes and changes this music. And he's there for bebop, he's there for hard bop, he's there for the soul jazz movement. He dabbles in the avant-garde at times. He's got roots in the swing era. He really bridges and crosses so many gaps. But because of the labels he was on, he doesn't get the same kind of credit that a lot of his contemporaries do. He never made it on Blue Note. That hurts his overall arching legacy for some reason. But if you look at who he played with, when he played with them, who he influenced, who his influences were, this guy's as important a figure in jazz as there is. We're all the way up to number 16. He's born in Boston, February 2nd, 1924. He's born Edward Boatner. His family is musical across the core. Sadly, his family gives him up for adoption. And he gets adopted by the Stitt family in Saginaw, Michigan, which is a long way from Harvard and the Music Conservatory of Boston that he was born into. He's moved out to Michigan, adopted by the Stitt family. And I think I did an episode on Sonny Stitt 3 months ago. I'll probably put a link to it. I'll give you more detail there if you want it. But Stitt has some troubling issues as a child, and I think a lot of that stays with him in his career, and it's why he's kind of the lone wolf that he is. He's one of the hardest working guys in business. He never really keeps one working band, and there's various reasons for that. Partly because he kept moving so much. He was always on the go, always part of what was happening. Where was the scene hottest? And so the lone wolf, Sonny Stitt, really never settles down. He plays in the style of Charlie Parker. You know, he definitely has Bird to him initially. He switches to the tenor at some point, and he ends up definitely creating his own sound. It's definitely rooted in the blues. He's in that same lineage of the fiery players who were rooted in the blues. You know, he plays with Billy Eckstine early on. He plays with Gene Ammons. Plays with Dexter Gordon. So you see his lineage is just really in that same pedigree. He plays with Dizzy quite a while in the 50s. He plays 10 records with Gene Ammons. He plays with Don Patterson, the organ player, a bunch. Like I said, I'm going to give you more detail if you want on the link to the episode about Sonny Stitt, but let's just move through his discography because it's immense. And I have over 50 of his albums. These are two of his early 10 inches on the Russ label. number 415, number 418. We're listening to this one right now. It's jazz at the hi-hat. And this is great stuff from the early 50s, showing how modern and how powerful a player he already was. Just wonderful recordings. And his output at Roost is some of the best mid-50s saxophone playing that there is. He has some sessions at Prestige before his Roost years, where he's playing with Bud Powell, J.J. Johnson. He's playing here with, let's see the band. Come on, where's the band? But he's doing tracks like Cherokee, your bebop standards, Can't We Be Friends, Sunny Sounds. These early Prestige recordings all are done in the late 40s, early 50s, and this is their 12-inch 7,000 LP issuing. This is number 7133, Stitz Bits, and he's not at Prestige at the time this comes out. This is more stuff that Prestige had in the vaults that they're putting out because Stitz having some success at Roost, and then he goes to Verve and really becomes a monster at the Verve label. We're going to go through his Roost stuff. There's these two 10 inches which I just showed you, and then 2204 plays the arrangements from the pen of Quincy Jones, which, as I mentioned before, Quincy's just showing up on the scene, and he's already getting albums as a leader. This is late Roost stuff, 2252. Looks like some of these are backwards. Feelings, 2247. 2245 is Sunny Side Up. Roost really relies on Johnny Smith and Sonny Stitt to kind of sell records. This is Stittsville, 2244. 2240 is the Sunny Side Of. They're just kind of, don't worry about it. A little bit of Stitt, 2235. Every one of these Roost records, if you see them in a store, they'll never really be more than 30 bucks. And sometimes they'll be as little as 10, 12, 15 bucks. Because sellers, record store guys, jazz knowledge isn't infinite. And they're like, oh, Roost, I don't really, it's not Roost. They don't charge you for them. The saxophones and Sonny Stitt, this is 2230. 2208, what a great cover that is, all smoky in the background. It's just called Sonny Stitt, Sonny Stitt, Sonny Stitt, Sonny Stitt, Sonny Stitt, Sonny Stitt, Sonny Stitt. This is with the New Yorkers, 2226. And this is 37 minutes and 48 seconds, 2219. And then this is very early. He's battling with Eddie Davis here. This is the first record, a 12-inch LP release that Roost has. They start out 1200 and they move it to 2200, probably because Atlantic and Pacific both are doing 1200 series as well. Now we're going to move to Verve, and these are coming backwards here. Oh no, we're fine. He does a lot of stuff at Verve. From about 56, 57 into early 60s, it's kind of prolific. This is a reissue of an earlier Verve record. This is Gene Ammons and Sonny Stitt, Boss Tenors in Orbit, probably from 61. Sensual Sound of Sonny Stitt with Ralph Burns strings, 84-51. Sonny Stitt Swings the Most, 83-80. 83-77, Saxophone Supremacy. Sonny Stitt Blows the Blues. This is a great record right there. That's a record every jazz fan should have. Oscar Peterson Trio. This is also outstanding stuff. All those 8200, 8300 Verve stuff that he's on. Plays Jimmy Joffrey. Outstanding. Personal Appearance, 83-24. Gene Ammons again. Boss Tenors. Only the Blues. These records kick butt. They're outstanding. New York jazz scene was the Sonny Stitt Quartet. Sunny Side Up. What a great record this is with Sonny Rollins and Dizzy Gillespie. The Hard Swing, 8306. The Sonny Stitt Quartet. What a great album cover that is. While he's doing the stuff at Verve, he's finding the time to do some trekking in Argo. 661 is Burning. Little matchstick you can see there. And that's a great record on the Argo label. Barry Harris is on the piano. Frank Gant is on the drums. It's really strong quartet, blues driven. Move On Over This is a little bit later. He kind of comes and goes from the Argo label, it seems, a few times. My Main Man with Benny Green. I love this record. The song Flame and Frost is outstanding. Ammons and Stitt, that's a reissue of some jam session that they did. This is with Bunky Green. That's a great record. Soul in the Night. Love that silhouette. Interactions with Zoot Sims. Another great Argo record. Rear and Back. He does a lot of stuff at Argo, and he's one of Argo's main saxophone guys. This is again with Gene Ammons. Dig 'em. 697, probably from 68, 69. At the DJ, 58, 59, not 68. At the DJ Lounge, 683, probably 59 again. This is early, 629. Sonny Stitt, just self-titled on Argo. Now we're going to go to Impulse, where he makes a couple records, probably 62, 63. Salt and Pepper, A52, and now A43. And these are both great records. Some great musicians show up on these. Milt Hinton, Hank Jones, really solid stuff. Low Flame is on the Jazzland imprint, which is Riverside essentially. This is just one record at Riverside, but it's a great session with Don Patterson, Paul Whedon, and Billy James. How he had the one record on Riverside, I don't know. He makes a couple records for Atlantic. Deuce is Wild. Sonny Stitt plays Bird, which is a great record. And then Sonny Stitt and the Top Brass, which is, this is a big group. I think Jimmy Cleveland's on this. Blue Mitchell, Matthew Gee, Duke Jordan, yeah, Jimmy Cleveland, Philly Joe Jones. That's an outstanding record. And now he comes back to Prestige. And his stuff at Prestige now at the end here is with Don Patterson a lot. He actually works with Booker Irvin on this one. It's Texas tenor meets barbecue soul jazz at this point. And these records are great. Soul Shack, Sonny Stitt with Jack McDuff, who he works with quite a lot. Don Patterson, Nightcrawler, Sonny Stitt, pow. These are going to be 65, 66. Soul Electricity, Don Patterson, Billy Butler, and Billy James. Primitivo Soul. Shangri-La, Don Patterson. Sonny Stitt with Jack McDuff, Meet Brother Jack, 7244. And so his career really goes from the bebop stuff into aspects of hard bop, but more just post bop. And then he moves into the soul jazz thing on Prestige. And that's also going to be selling. You know, those records do sell. And so they're available out there for people to have. And it's just the weirdest thing to me how people seem to only value jazz records that are rare and expensive. That's a mistake. There's a lot of great jazz that just because it's sold well, you shouldn't hold that against it. It actually means you might like it, because a lot of people did. How weird is that? I want to always promote the jazz that sold well at the time that's underappreciated today. A, it's inexpensive. B, it's of great value. And C, it helps you understand the landscape. The stuff that's out there on the edges isn't as landmark or as important or as edgy if you don't know what the center looks like. You got to have that measuring stick so you know what out is. And a lot of these great players that I'm talking about, Turrentine, Ammons, Sonny Stitt, they are the center of that highway. They come from the Hawkins, Ben Webster, Dexter Gordon lineage. They're fueling that fire. They're keeping the barbecue going. And it's a long party if you're in the center of the road for the sax players. That's it for part one. We're going to wrap this up and say thank you to my pretty wife. And we'll see you soon. Peace.